Good morning and welcome aboard. It's great to have so many people here this morning joining us for our webinar today on the D-Link 4G and 5G solutions. Which one of these is right for your business? It's a very good morning or a good afternoon to you in whichever part of the world you're joining from today. My name is Phil Tarbox. I'm the National Sales Manager for Business Solutions at D-Link in Australia. It's great to have your company here today, and we very much look forward to having you with us for the next 40 to 60 minutes as we make our way through this webinar this morning. Also got a couple of colleagues along with me as well. My D-Link's esteemed commercial product manager, Ilya. It's great to have you here this morning. Ilya's going to be talking to us a little bit about a new management solution for our business range of 4G routers. So we'll be hearing from Ilya a little bit later along. And of course, we'll be sticking around for the Q&A session right at the end of the webinar as well. It's also great to welcome along this morning one of our partners, Alex Slade, the CEO at A Corp Computers. Alex will be sharing with us a little bit later on some of his experience of working with D-Link and some of the solutions that he's been able to put together for his customers as well. So we've got lots of interesting things that we'll be sharing with you this morning, some insights into what we think about 4G and 5G, some of the solution offerings that we've got, and hopefully everybody learns something today as well. So just a couple of little bits of housekeeping for us, and thanks thanks for a few of you for notes in the chat window. I think as COVID-19 continues on, I think we're all getting pretty familiar with Zoom and some of these video conferencing tools and how these things work. So there's a Q&A box that's available within Zoom. We will be taking questions at the end, but as a question comes to mind during the session today, please don't hesitate to drop your question in there, and we will deal with that right at the end of the session today. We'll be answering all those questions live during the webinar. You will also be sent a link with a survey for you to complete. It should take no more than 2 minutes for you to complete, so we'd really appreciate that, so we can continue to deliver some content and information that's useful for you there as well. We have also got a lucky door prize today, which we'll be drawing at random at the end of the webinar. So that's a DWM 312 4G router with an RRP of just under $1,000. So there'll be one lucky person that will be receiving one of those. So please stay tuned. Certainly, if you're attending for the entirety of the webinar, your chances will probably go up to take one of those things away. The recording that's here, we will send you a link for that. It'll be available on YouTube, so you're very welcome to share that with your customers or with your colleagues as well. So why don't we get started? Let's have a look at what we're going to be talking about today. Run through the agenda. So 5G, and I guess that's what we're all here to have a look at today. Is it hype or is it reality? So hopefully we'll make things a little bit clearer there. Some industry use cases where we see that 5G is going to be potentially useful. Look at a roadmap for D-Link's range of 5G product. Look at some of the 4G trends that we've been experiencing and the solutions that we have available. Ilya is going to introduce the DEX solution to us later on in the webinar, and we're also going to hear from Alex, a partner's perspective on working with D-Link and using our 4G and possibly 5G solutions at some stage as well. So let's get started. We're seeing a lot of hype out there in the market. The telcos have been very good at spruiking 5G. There's been some pretty fantastic advertisements out there from Telstra that have been pushing 5G. You know, you're not ready for 3G, you weren't ready for 4G, you don't think you're ready for 5G, but you are. I actually quite like the ad. I think they've done a really good job at actually going and creating some creating some hype around the product. But what's the reality today in 2020? And I guess what does the future hold? Around about 12 months ago, I saw this image of a person boasting on LinkedIn about they just got themselves a new 5G phone, and sitting in London in their Costa coffee, drinking their coffee, working off their laptop, enjoying fabulous 5G speeds of 720 megabits per second. Fantastic, isn't that wonderful? Of course, as with any social media, there was a whole lot of vitriol that this person received from that as well. Of, hey man, what are you going to do with that 720 meg? Are you going to power the entire office building off your mobile phone? Do you really need that? Do you really need that speed? Of course, those questions, while I guess there's a bit of fun in there, there's to a degree an element of truth in that as well. Here's just a screenshot just taken this morning from my home off my own 4G mobile device using Optus with a download speed of 115 meg and 19 up, and that's certainly a pretty acceptable speed. It's so acceptable, in fact, that I'm using a D-Link 4G router as my primary method of connection to the internet. That it's certainly a far better speed than the NBN is able to offer me in my area over HFC. Things can get even better on 4G as well. Here's a screenshot from the last time I was in the D-Link office at Macquarie Park back in June 2019. Well, it's not quite right. It certainly feels like a long time ago that I was in the D-Link office. Of course, we've all been working from home since the end of March. This was a shot taken then, showing some pretty fantastic 4G speeds again off my the same handset at 500 meg down and 53 meg up, which is pretty terrific. Again, you know, faster than the NBN, and at times it's going to be faster than some fiber connections that I might have coming into my building. So 5G, is it all about speed on my own personal device? Is that the thing that's really, really important? Is that what's going to drive 5G? Something the telcos would have you think that, because that's going to help them sell more handsets. That's, you know, really a big thing as part of their business plan, is going out and selling more tin. And the way that they go and drive sales is going and creating a new technology, and I guess new needs or perceived needs, and tell people that they need these speeds. So, what are some of the pros that we might see around 5G? We have a look at this chart here, which I think is quite good. It, you know, gives a good overview as to things that 5G can offer, and perhaps some things where it doesn't. So we're certainly seeing that capacity is going to be significantly improved. Who's ever been to a football stadium or a convention centre, and they've tried to run their computer, or they've tried to use their phone to access the internet or something like that? You go and put, you know, 10 to 50 to 100,000 people in the same location, all trying to use the same towers. Of course, it gets very congested, and the speed goes down, and the user experience is poor. The 5G is certainly going to help out in that with more capacity. I think really the biggest thing that's important there is low latency. There's a couple of industries, a couple of areas that are really going to benefit from that. Not so much at the user level on handset, but some other industries that are like medical and so on, that are going to really benefit from low latency. As we can see here, there's certainly some cons that go along with 5G as well. In Australia, 5G is going to be operating within the 3.4 to 3.8 gigahertz spectrum, and that's quite a high frequency. For those of you that are familiar with Wi-Fi, we know that the 2.4 gigahertz frequency, while there's not quite as much capacity in that space, we do get greater distance out of it. So there's certainly some benefit of that. In 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi, it's much faster. There's more capacity. There's more available channels. There's less congestion. But of course, it's a higher frequency. It's got a significantly shorter waveform, which means that the amount of distance that signal can travel is significantly less. So there's additional base stations, there's additional access points that need to be installed to be able to get the appropriate level of coverage to be able to sort that. And that's certainly the same case within with 5G as well. 3.8 gigahertz, which is where most 5G in Australia will be, it's significantly higher frequency than where 4G can get to, which is at 700 megahertz. So there's there's a real distance problem that's inherent to 5G. So there's a significant amount of more infrastructure that's required. And this is a big problem for the telcos. This is one of the reasons why the rollout has been as slow as it has been today. There was an interesting article which came out in IT News last year, which was talking about some draft pricing that IPART in Australia, the Independent Pricing and Regulatory Tribunal, some draft pricing that they'd announced, which was really wanting to bring parity for the that telcos would be paying to install base stations, really to bring up the price that they currently pay to governments for base stations installed on Crown land. So we were seeing a pretty significant increase in that at just over 1,000 times the price they're currently paying, which is a pretty big cost. If you're a telco and it's costing you 1,000 times more to go and install more base stations on land owned by the government, you've been getting a pretty sweet deal so far. That there's a very big cost to your business to go out and install that. Of course, those costs have got to be passed on to somebody, which typically is going to be you and me, the consumer of these services as well. So that's certainly a con that goes in there as well. There's putting up more infrastructure. Not only is there a cost in installing those, but there's going to be a high cost as to where these things are going to be able to be installed as well. So what's been the reality of installations of 5G so far? A whole lot of this information is publicly available from both the Telstra and the Optus websites. Here we can see a map of Australia so far, and I do apologise to people that are outside of Australia, to our friends over the ditch in New Zealand, that I don't have any data to share with you here, but no doubt the experience in New Zealand is pretty similar to what it is in Australia as well. So if we look at 4G coverage and 3G coverage, which are represented there in green, we've got pretty good coverage. If we look at 5G, these are the little dots of purple. I'm going to zoom in on our 3 largest cities, Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane. I do apologise to people outside of those areas, but of course you can go and have a look at this information on the Telstra and Optus sites if you like yourself. If we look at Sydney and out to regional New South Wales as far as orange, here's where the 5G coverage is today, and we can see that it's pretty patchy. Certainly for me, if I'm a mobile user and I'm wanting to rely on 5G everywhere, it's really not up to snuff just yet. We zoom in a little bit more on Sydney. There's huge swathes of Sydney which don't have coverage just yet. If we look where D-Link's office is in Macquarie Park, there's no coverage that's there, and there's no land coverage that's in that space as well. Certainly a bit of a challenge if you're a Telstra customer and you're wanting to rely on 5G for your mobile workforce or for you as a mobile user. Pretty similar story in Melbourne. Again, pretty patchy coverage, and certainly you get outside of the Melbourne metropolitan area. There's some areas which have been covered, but again, not so much out of the Melbourne metro area. Again, we zoom in on Melbourne a little bit, and there's again not a huge amount of coverage that's there. I'm a little bit surprised to see places like Toorak, the well-heeled areas of Toorak and South Yarra that don't have coverage just yet, and there's no plans for that to install that in those areas as well. Again, pretty similar story in southeast Queensland. We've got some coverage, patchy coverage around Brisbane and the Gold Coast. If you're in Toowoomba, you're doing very well. Greetings to our partners up in Toowoomba today, enjoying great 5G coverage up there, care of Telstra. We zoom in and we look at some of the areas in Brisbane. Now, a couple of our distributors, Blue Chip and MMT, have got offices in Hurston and around Newstead. Not much coverage in those areas today. I've got some good friends of mine that live in Mount Gravatt. Again, not so much coverage in that space. So certainly not great from a user perspective in terms of the ubiquitous coverage that we've pretty much come to expect from our telcos when we're using our handsets. So what's the story like with Optus? There's a map of Australia, and there's I was only able to pull a 5G a map from them. Again, we're not really seeing much outside of the capital cities. Again, just a bit of a deep dive into the Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane areas. And again, we're looking fairly patchy within these areas. Of course, within the Macquarie Park area where D-Link's office is, fantastic coverage there. Of course, that's where the Optus head office is in Sydney, is in Macquarie Park. So no great surprise that there's coverage there. But certainly big gaps across the Greater Sydney region, and not so much if you head outside of the Greater Sydney area. Again, a similar story in Melbourne, and I think an even worse story that we can find up in Brisbane, with our friends at Toowoomba completely missing out on Optus 5G coverage so far. So, high poor reality. Well, I think the verdict today is certainly across Australia that there's a whole lot of hype there, that there's no great reason for me as a consumer to go and jump across to 5G just yet. If I'm a business user and I'm looking at fixed broadband in a business space, then I really very carefully need to check, have I got coverage there, and is there planned coverage in that area? If I'm looking at going and deploying and using 5G technology. So it's not quite there just yet, but there's certainly going to be some benefits. There's going to be some reasons as to why I might want to do that in the future. We look at this chart here. This was put together in 2018 with 20 leading manufacturers and organisations as part of a survey that they completed as to what they saw as use cases being for 5G. So broken down into three different categories. So enhanced mobile broadband, we see things like 3D streaming, video and gaming, massive content streaming. These are the things that we're really driving it, along with augmented reality and virtual reality as well. These sorts of things from a user's perspective, and a lot of those things I'd be doing off my handset. Certainly, as far as use in Australia goes, there's not really that much coverage really to be able to deliver these sorts of services. It's the last two areas that I think are probably the most important and the most interesting areas. And this is where things like low latency that we spoke about earlier in the webinar today are really going to be able, that people are going to be able to take advantage of and really require usage of these things. Things like mobile health and e-health and telemedicine are very, very important that we get low latency. If I'm a surgeon and if I'm operating on a patient, I need to know with an incision that I've just made, I really need to know if I need to stop that incision now or now. That's where latency is going to be really important. And as a patient, I want that surgeon having the fastest, most reliable, low latency internet connection possible. I think that that's really going to be a big driver of that. And I think Australia, for the first time, at least in the last 2 months, is starting to embrace some of these e-health concepts, that being able to use things like video conferencing to be able to go and conduct a consultation with a general practitioner or with a specialist. I think that certainly the federal government in Australia seems to be more open to these sorts of things, where they weren't so much before. And of course, it's technology that's enabling these things to happen. Things like smart cities, I think there's a tremendous opportunity in that space. Of course, things like autonomous driving, which will come here eventually. Who knows how quickly that's going to be, but a ubiquitous coverage of 5G, again with low latency really being the big driver of that, and of course capacity being important, potentially is going to allow things like autonomous driving to be able to work particularly well. Certainly around our major capital cities, it's going to be a bit of a challenge, outside of metropolitan areas, certainly in a very big country like Australia, to be able to deliver that high-speed, low-latency, ubiquitous coverage that's going to be required to deliver these sorts of things. So what's D-Link doing in this space today? If you joined our webinar a couple of weeks ago, we really see that products like Nucleus Cloud, our cloud management solution for switching, for wireless access points, and with a raft of products like IP surveillance cameras and business-grade routers, all being able to be managed and monitored and configured by the cloud, are really going to benefit from these sorts of services. Our DEX service is going to be able to help users to be able to go and manage, monitor, and configure their 4G and their 5G business-grade routers as well. Things like smart parking, smart campuses, traffic management, of course, public safety. Of course, the things are really important, and there's some projects that we've done in Taiwan around pollution control, which are really taking advantage of 4G LTE networks. And of course, these things are only going to get better. The communication is going to get more reliable and faster, and with lower latency is going to be able to deliver improved results in these sorts of areas as well. So watch this space for some solutions and partnerships that D-Link is working on in the background to help our partners to be able to deliver these sorts of solutions out to your customers in the very near future. People have been watching the press. You might have seen late yesterday or today that there's been some 5G solutions which have just been announced, which is certainly very timely for our webinar today. A few items that are on our roadmap for Q3, towards the end of Q3, so around September and going into October. The first item highlighted here, the DWR 2101, which is a 5G mobile hotspot supporting Wi-Fi 6, pretty long-lasting battery as well, a 5,300 milliamp hour battery. Just at the Las Vegas Consumer Electronics Show, that was awarded there for some for innovation on that product, along with the outdoor-mounted IP65 router, which you can put a SIM card directly into. Of course, with 5G being at high frequency, that's going to be a challenge as soon as I start to get inside my home, which is typically made out of a pretty solid construction, whether it be brick or whether it be timber, that signal is really not going to penetrate that well indoors. Again, there's an innovation award that we've won on this particular product as well. We haven't seen that as to the when that's coming onto the roadmap in Australia just yet. Certainly expect that there's going to be demand for this at some point. Last but not least is the DWR 978. So similar to the 4G router that I'm running in my home today, we have the DWR 978, which is a 5G router, which supports Wi-Fi 6, and there's also an option to support voice over LTE on that particular device. Of course, all of these devices have a SIM card slot where you can enter a SIM directly into the unit, much better than having a USB dongle to try and get one that's compatible and to try and insert that device into there. Again, the DWR 978, we're expecting to see late in Q3 this year as well. No pricing's been announced on these devices just yet. So there's certainly things coming from the consumer side of things, and I expect as we roll on later in the year that we're going to see some business grade routers as well that are going to help us bring that forward too in the 5G space. So what's been happening for D-Link in the 4G space so far? Well, certainly it's been all beer and skittles, as people like to say, in terms of 4G. We've seen really significant demand and excellent sales of these products over the last 2 years. That we've seen more than a doubling of sales of both our business and also our consumer range of product in the 4G in the 4G area. So what's been the driver of these increased sales for us? think one of the biggest things that that's happened is when both Telstra and Optus announced their LTE band 28 or their 700 megahertz technology. There'll be many of you that are familiar with those names, but there's probably quite a few that aren't. Certainly talking about band 28 isn't quite as attractive as giving a product a name. And both Telstra and Optus have done this with these services, which they've been calling 4GX and 4G Plus. Those I'm sure that you've heard of. So effectively, there's a couple of key things that a 700 megahertz has done. Firstly, this frequency was the old analog TV frequency that our television was being broadcast on. Of course, there's no longer any analog TV anymore. Everything is digital, and that spectrum has gone and been repurposed. And I think it's been a really great decision to go and repurpose that. Of course, the government's got to go and resell that spectrum and make some money out of that. But there's been some really big benefits, in particular out to regional Australia. Of course, being that it's running at a low frequency, 700 megahertz, it has a longer waveform, which means that I'm able to get greater distance and, of course, greater speeds at a greater distance as well. Previously, the lowest bandwidth that telcos were able to operate was in the 850 megahertz space, or band 5. So I'm able to get 1.2 times the range. Of course, a lot of 4G is operating in around the 1800 or the 2100 megahertz space. So again, are not great distances on those products in comparison to 700 meg. There's still been some benefits in metropolitan areas where there's been better or improved in building connectivity. Of course, I get a better connection rate. It means I get better speed as well. Both telcos have invested really heavily in this technology with over 10,000 base stations across Australia that support that. So there's really great coverage that's there for 4GX and 4G Plus. And, you know, that's been a really big area that D-Link and our partners have been able to capitalise on. But what's driven this success? And I guess there's a couple of products in this area that have done that. We've got our home consumer product, the DWR921 and DWR956. Both of them offer Wi-Fi with a single SIM card. And of course, we've then got our business grade product, the DWM312, which we'll be giving away as a lucky door prize today. That's been a great product for us. Certainly acting as a pretty good high-powered router with both client and server VPN connectivity available on that. 2 SIM cards, so it can support multiple carriers for failover within that. And that's been really important for standalone installations where that product has gone out to for end-to-end, so machine-to-machine and IoT, Internet of Things installations. So things like digital signage, vending machines, that's really been an area where people have been using these devices as a primary method to connect to the internet. Certainly partners like Alex and many, many more like him have been using this device for failover. So we all know that the internet is very, very critical, that we're connected all the time. There's lots of technology that is driving this. Of course, things like Office 365, and there's a whole lot of hosted network applications that are running out in Azure and AWS, and without a connection to the internet, my business can't run. Potentially, I'm running my point of sale using Xero or MYOB, which of course, you know, both of these are now running those things online. So having 100% connectivity to the internet is more important than ever. Business continuity is absolutely required. What's also driven the success of that particular product in the failover space is not only using that in conjunction with the D-Link DSR series of router, but also some technology partnerships that we've been encouraged to go and foster with vendors like Barracuda, WatchGuard, Sophos, SonicWall, and Fortinet. And these vendors all make market-leading UTM products. And a number of these vendors, our partners, have said, hey, it'd be great if you guys would work with these people. So we've gone and created some pretty great technical guides on how to go and set up our DWM312 4G router in conjunction with these other vendors' products. And we've gone and produced these how-to guides. There's an example of one with WatchGuard. Here's an example of one with Sophos. These have all been really well-received documents. We've received lots of kudos from partners, and that certainly helped us open the door and start working with partners to go and solve solutions that they've been looking for, that their customers have been coming to them with problems. All of these documents have been produced by the one and only Ilya, our fantastic commercial product manager. So thank you, Ilya, for putting in all the hard yards and understanding all these other vendors' technologies. So it's actually now a pretty good time for me to hand over to Ilya, who's going to take us through D-Link Dex, a 4G management tool, just a brand new product for us to have a look at. Okay, Ilya, over to you.
All right, hello everyone. Let me share my screen. Here we go. So what, thank you, Phil, for this introduction. So what I wanted to show you today is the D-Link Dex. It's a remote monitoring and management system for the D-Link 4G modems and routers. It is a cloud system. Originally, it was developed for several projects in Europe for tracking trucks, as far as I know, or lorries, as they call them in the UK. And also another interesting project was to monitor UPS status, where you could see live feed or what's the battery status of the device and temperature and so on. So all the communication obviously done through the internet via D-Link 4G devices. So being quite a useful tool, it is now being picked up by other D-Link offices in different countries, and we ourselves also planning to launch it in Australia and New Zealand next month. And we'll make it available to our partners free of charge, so there's no licensing fees or access fees or anything like that. So it would be great to hear your feedback on this system, just to see how it fits into your application. Now, let me show you what this solution offers. So it's a demo site, so there's not many devices here, but should be enough to give us an idea how it all works. So what we see here is a dashboard. So we can see how many devices are online and how many are offline, if there are any errors being reported by these devices. So if devices support GPS or have a GPS data feed, they will also be shown on a map here. So on the dashboard, you can also see the firmware usage information. So if you created a task, for example, to get all or some devices to be updated to the latest firmware, you can track the progress here. If you look at the devices themselves, so we see a list of devices, and there's a short overview what the signal strength, etc. And we can drill down into details into each and every device. So let's click on this DWM312, our popular 4G modem. And straight away, you can see here there's a lot of information, detailed information about the device. So there's a serial number, there is MAC address, firmware version, and you can also see the information on LTE signal strength and what band the modem is connected on. Also, there is information on what amount of traffic each interface is using, so LTE and LAN, and if the device supports Wi-Fi, it will have information on Wi-Fi usage as well. So both for upload and download traffic, and it's historical data for the past 7 days. Now, apart from the status of the device itself, of the connection, there are also some useful things here, such as useful for support, for remote support. So it's here you can see, you can reboot the device, you can perform a reset if needed, you can update firmware, for example, and select several firmwares in here. You can upload them as well. I'll show you in a second how it is done. You can obviously upload the config and download all the log files from the device, which will definitely help with troubleshooting. Now, under diagnostics, there's some other useful tools in here, such as a ping and trace route. You can also run download tests, say by selecting whichever interface you want to do, and check your connection there. So it also helps with troubleshooting. And for more precise control of the device, so under device, parameters. You can check all the details, all the configuration here, and you can change them here and push to the device. So that can all be done, obviously, remotely. Right, so in addition to that, there are some great tools in here, such as alert configuration. So you can add your own alert rules, and you can get the system to trigger an alert or an email to be sent if a certain event happened on a selected device or all devices or a bunch of devices. So it's all very flexible here on how you can set up your rules in here. Obviously, the files which I mentioned earlier, so you can upload firmwares or config files to use for troubleshooting or managing the devices remotely. So the system will take, and you can obviously arrange them in a manner that you prefer. Well, another useful tool is group tasks. So that's obviously where you can create different tasks for your devices. So you can set up, say, a task to update firmware to all or specific devices, and you can schedule it to a specific time, and you can monitor the progress here. Right. So so this is in regards to devices. Another thing I wanted to show you is the GPS tracking. So here we go. So what we see here, if you've got a device which has a GPS built in, or you have a GPS data that can be fed into the system, so that can also be done. So you can track the location and movement of your devices. So let's have a look at this device here. Right, so you can select the date that you want to have a look at, and you can see what the path of that device was on a map. So you can see all the traveling. So start of the journey, end of the journey, so all different routes of these devices. Obviously, as for any management and monitoring system, you have the logs, or the event logs, which you can sort by date or by certain event or by certain device, and you can also export them if needed. And another thing I wanted to show you is the organization overview. So the system supports a multi-tenant multi-tenant setup, where you can add your own customers and different sites and add users with different levels of access. So we can have a look at permissions that you can assign to people here. That's all editable here. Right, so that means that you can have customers who can monitor their own devices without seeing other devices from other customers. So this is a quick overview of the cloud management system for the D-Link 4G modem routers. And if you think the system can benefit your business, please do let us know. Or if you've got any feedback, we definitely would like to hear that. So this is in a nutshell, very quick presentation. I hope you learned something, and I hope you like the system which was developed by our developers. So we'll probably pass this to Alex. Sorry, Phil, I think you're still muted.
Great, thanks, Ilya. That was excellent. Certainly a great tool that's available. What was the price on that again, Ilya?
It's free.
Okay.
It's the best price you can get, free.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry I asked. I thought we might have been, charging $1,000 or something like that for it. No, okay, terrific. And that we expect to be available from next month, I think. Is that right?
Yes. So that's the plan. Again, if people will see that as the benefits of their system, we would like to hear their feedback. As I mentioned, it was developed for different projects. It was customized for different projects, and we're happy to look into customizing it if there is a demand in a certain environment or a certain application. We can certainly work with our developers in introducing that as well. Okay.
Great. Thanks, Ilya. I'd now like to welcome to the webinar Alex Slade, CEO at A Corp Computers. Alex is going to give us a bit of a partner's perspective as to working with D-Link and what you've been doing with our 4G product so far. Alex, over to you. Welcome.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks for that intro. I'll just share my slides here. Let me know if you can see that. So yeah, we've been a D-Link partner for a number of years now. Quite happy on a number of fronts with the products and the service we get. We're using everything pretty much in the portfolio, switching, business grade routers and the wireless. The introduction of D-Link Nucleus, we're also tapping into some of that for our customers to provide a cloud managed network option. And I think we may be one of the first partners to jump on with the 312s when they were first released here in Australia. And they've been quite helpful on a number of areas for us, both projects and sort of emergency situations. So we've got customers Australia-wide, branch offices. We've also got an office in Sydney CBD and the Hunter Valley. Two very different environments, quite great coverage for connectivity in terms of fixed line, fibre, you name it in Sydney. Not so much up in the Hunter Valley. So D-Link's 4G options have been quite good to get some of our more remote customers connected. Yeah, so I think our first deployment of anything to do with D-Link 4G solution was actually a bit of a problem for us. So we had a new customer up in Queensland on the Gold Coast. We were getting them connected with a nice high-speed fibre service to supply their office and a number of things they were doing there. And unfortunately, they got the order into us just as the telco embargo came into effect around that time. So this was about two years ago now. So we had a bit of an issue. They were moving in, they were setting up, but there was nothing connectivity-wise happening for at least 3 to 4 months while things went through the process of getting connected on their fibre service. So we went to D-Link and we bought 3 of these 312s, as you can see in the photo. And if you look further down, there's a blue box there from a company called Fusion Broadband. So we were very quickly able to get these devices set up. We had 2 Optus services and a Telstra service in the 3 units, providing some fairly decent 4G speeds. This was in a basement communications closet, so signal wasn't the best, but it made way for what we did. And we bonded them together and provided a single static IP thanks to the Fusion box there. And we were pulling speeds of about 200 or 250 megabits per second, which was fantastic. Not near as what they were going to get with their fibre service, but certainly enough to push them through for a few months while we waited for that. And look, that was in place for a good three or 4 months. And then the beauty of it was once we had our fibre service in, we were able to rip them out and everything worked smoothly. We did put one in as a permanent solution for failover. So we ended up actually routing the cable up through the conduit there. And it's actually, the device is sitting in a top level office, so getting the best coverage you can in a permanent solution. So in the event the fibre is cut or there's an outage, our customer can keep on working. I'm sure everyone is well aware of the outages the NBN often suffers. It is obviously large majority of it considered a consumer service, but for many of our customers, it's the only option they can get. It's either that or 4G. Or old school ADSL if it's still available in their area. This customer happens to be, this photo was taken for a CBD customer on a bit of a budget. So we've got 2 NBN lines there, bonded together with a D-Link DSR. Obviously that doesn't provide any sort of failover, but it does improve their speeds quite significantly. About 6 months ago, there was a large outage in that area. In the end, it took around 2 weeks to get resolved. It's a HFC area, and there's a whole lot of issues surrounding that technology. So we had to get this customer up and running fairly quickly. What we're able to do, we actually keep a number of these on hand, about 4 or 5 of them in our inventory, with month-to-month 4G services ready to go. We've got some wholesale options with Optus that just provide a dynamic IP for some of our more budget customers, and we've got some static IP device services with 4G from another wholesaler, and we're able to actually spin these up quite quickly. We can either express post them, courier them, or get one of our techs on site to set them up. And look, it's a good way to get our customers back online as quickly as we can, especially in the event of an unforeseen outage. This particular customer elected not to have that additional monthly expense of a permanent failover solution. So that's why we advised having these on hand just in case something happens. Touch wood, this was their only outage during that time, so it was a good solution. This one in particular was a good one. So the device itself is obviously its own device. It's self-sufficient from the router and from everything else. So I didn't have a better photo to take, but this is actually positioned about 10 feet away from the comms cabinet, stuck on the wall right near the door to get the best signal possible. And we ran a rather long cable and an extension cord to power it up. Reconfigured WAN port 2 on the D-Link DSR, which is there, and away they went. So we were able to get them up within that 24-hour period. So yeah, and while they waited for those roughly 2 weeks while NBN sorted out the major issues in that area. Outside of that, this is a bit of a dodgy looking photo from my parents' home up in the Hunter Valley. Got their NBN service via VDSL, so had to bridge a modem using the D-Link equipment there. And then we've got, it's actually disconnected at the moment. I was playing around with it last week, but we've got a 4G 312 there for failover as well. So this is a permanent failover solution. Again, VDSL, the fiber to the node isn't the best, especially when your node's far away. So we're doing both a bit of load balancing usually and failover in case there's outages in the area, which do happen from time to time in these regional towns. So that's a good way. It's very simple to set up for us. So we use the D-Link DSRs as primary routers for a lot of our customers. We also have a firewall brand of choice for more higher end deployments. Both are very easy to configure with failover using the D-Link 312s. Other solutions, we've got a couple of projects running at the moment for a regional council, increasing their what you'd call a smart town sort of scenario. In particular, it's focusing on CCTV and cameras, as well as some interesting sensors they're doing in the area. So it's an interesting project. So we'll be using likely the 312s as solutions to power those devices with connectivity on their own network. So that's an interesting one that we're working on at the moment. As I said earlier, remote sites, a lot of our customers are regional areas, and if they can't get fixed wireless NBN or satellites to high latency, but they've got some 4G signal, which is usually the case, we're able to stick in a D-Link 4G modem and get them running. So if you've got any questions on sort of any of the solutions we've done, or any of our experience with the product, which for 99% of the time runs really well, and for that 1% of the time, the support we've had from the D-Link team has been pretty phenomenal. It'd be good to put them in the Q&A box, and yeah, we can answer those at the end.
Great, thanks, Alex. I've got a couple of questions for you, but I'll ask those during the Q&A session
Sure.
Q&A session as well. Okay, thank you very much. And I'll just go back to sharing the screen. And that's not the right one that I've shared. Too many screens going here, Ilya.
I know. I thought you watched that video on what not to do during Zoom presentations.
That's right. That's right. Okay. Well, not quite an expert just yet. We'll need another 6 months of isolation to get
That's
there.
okay.
Okay. Thanks, Alex, for sharing that from sharing your perspective there. And we appreciate you giving up your time to participate in this morning.
Yeah, no problem.
What's next? What have we got? What have we got next for you? Hopefully, there's been some information here that's been shared that you found useful. Of course, it wouldn't be a webinar or a D-Link webinar if there wasn't some sort of offer or a call to action that's there as well. So we've got a couple of offers available through our distribution partners. So certainly, I'm sure you're familiar with a lot of these distributors: Multimedia Technology, Blue Chip Infotech, Hills, EDSA, Cinex, Ingram, and Pacific Datacom are the distributors where our products are available through in Australia. We also have Ingram Micro and Cinex in New Zealand as well. A couple of offers. These prices all here in Australian dollars. We're offering us a not for resale price or NFR on the DWM312, the 4G business grade router. So $299 ex-GST on that product. There is just a limit of one of those per reseller. We're also offering an ongoing price from now until the end of May. All these offers will expire on the 31st of May, where you can get the DWM312 for your customer. So to resell that for $399 ex-GST. So there's a couple of codes to quote there, which you can send out with your PO to your distributor, and they'll get those processed for you all until the end of this month. Okay, so of course you do need to be a D-Link partner to actually be able to participate in these deals as well. So if you're not yet signed up to be a partner, please go and do so. dlink.co.nz/rewards and dlink.com.au/rewards. Some great reasons to become a partner. Some pretty decent upfront discounts available on our product. There's gift cards which you can redeem each quarter. Should you meet a fairly simple quarterly target, can be redeemed for all sorts of things: JB Hi-Fi, Coles Myer, Woolworths, Caltex, etc., etc. Of course, there's demo purchase programs, access to priority technical support, and there's some bonus offers as well. Of which one of those offers we have going for this quarter in Australia is a D-Link branded Amazon Echo 8, which you can get for your home or for your office. Will go very nicely, hopefully, Alex, in your office, along with your D-Link Nucleus branded coffee machine and D-Link Nucleus branded fridge as well.
Absolutely, too much D-Link, I think, happening in the office at the moment.
Okay, so in addition to just in terms of what we offer, we've got a list here of our key contacts available as well. So our partner priority support both in Australia and also in New Zealand, general inquiries number, and just a quick run through as to who all of our people are. Across Australia, we've got 3 account managers or channel managers for you to work with. In Queensland and the Northern Territory, as Bernie Reisenberger. Sure, all you folks from the northern part of Australia all know Bernie very well. Michael Crocombe, looking after New South Wales and ACT for D-Link, and the indefatigable Colin Chamberlain, with a very, very large area to cover: Victoria, Tasmania, South Australia, WA. lucky enough, he's got the boots big enough to be able to go and the feet big enough to fill those large shoes that he's got to cover all of those regions. Supporting those gentlemen are pre-sales engineers David Urbano and Aaron Bilton. So leave that screen up there for a bit. If you're not familiar with those folks, please take a note of those details. Send them an email, give them a phone call, and we're absolutely here to help you with site surveys, whether they be physical ones or predictive ones for wireless, for switching, for routing, for IP surveillance. Very happy to work with you. Also pleased to announce in New Zealand, we have a presence on the ground there as well. Paul Batchelor, that has joined us just recently. So it's great to have a presence there in New Zealand for our awards partner program as well. So that just about concludes the webinar for today, which does bring us to the question, a time for question and answer as well. Just while we get all the Q&A information up right now, Alex, I might just ask you a quick question, which somebody might have actually mentioned it in here. The take-up rate that you've experienced with the D-Link 4G failover solution, what's the take-up rate that you've had with that with your customers?
Look, we see about 70% of our customers take up a failover solution, the large majority of which would be using an NBN or similar service. So we pitch it as a standard, saying, look, here are the pros and cons. Here's our very best recommendation that you should have a failover service. And we make that quite enticing. We provide that, bundled into the product we sell, to the NBN service or the internet service, as well as managing the network and that sort of thing. So yeah, roughly about 70%. And for those that don't, that's why we have those 312s on hand for those as emergency scenarios, which obviously are available, so short-term and long-term immediate response. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I've got a couple more for you, but we might just spread the love around a little bit. Got a question here from George. Good afternoon to you. Ilya, I'm not sure if we're going to be able to answer this question live right now, but possibly it's something we can come back with, but we'll put it out there anyway. Of course, so George asks here, due to the high frequency of 5G and its associated coverage issues, there's been some discussion around 5G seamless handover to Wi-Fi to extend coverage into buildings. Aruba have just announced a solution around this. Are there any similar plans with D-Link?
I think that one of the products that you showed, Phil, does exactly that. So it's a 5G receiver, and then it rebroadcasts the connectivity through Wi-Fi. So you mount it on the side of the building. So inside the building where 5G cannot get through, it still gets through Wi-Fi.
Okay. Great. Okay. So with no detail on that one in terms of a launch date just yet. Did win an award at CES at Las Vegas earlier this year. So hopefully that's something we see before the end of the year. Okay, a question here from Matt. Does the DWR978 have a removable antenna?
I looked it up. Yes, it does. So you can remove the antennas from it.
Okay, terrific. So similar to the DWR956, DWR921, and the DWM312. Or removable antennas, just I imagine earlier it's just with a standard SMA connector.
Yeah, I believe so. So I haven't seen that product, so it's outside my portfolio. So Bay is our consumer product manager who looks after these products, and I'm pretty sure she knows all the answers.
Okay.
But normally for all our 4G 5G devices, the connector is SMA, standard SMA connector.
Okay, great. Thanks, Celia. Do any of the 5G routers support IP pass-through or bridging?
Yes, absolutely. So some of the examples that Phil's mentioned with DWM312 and other devices, that we say bundle or suggest to connect to, say, a firewall. We'll also include a bridging guide, so definitely you can do complete bridging, so it will pass the public IP address onto the device behind it.
Okay, so that's the that's our 4G ones. I'm now it's a bit hard to say perhaps with the 5G ones. I think the 978 possibly is not going to support bridging. No doubt we'll have a business grade 5G product similar to the 4G DWM 312 available at some point.
Yeah, so obviously, most likely we'll see that feature in a business grade product rather than consumer grade.
Yeah. I expect the 978, I would be able to put that into bridge mode, very similar to the 921 and 956. Okay, Ilya, this is going to be testing you here in terms of the all the LTE LTE CATs. What categories do the LTE modems support? Cat 4, 6, 9, 11, 16.
Well, with
maybe I don't know if you could briefly explain what these things mean, Ilya.
No, it's just it's a maximum speed, so it's a new generation of technology. So the DWM 312, it is a Cat 4 product. So all the future products that we'll be getting, they'll be Cat 6, Cat 9, etc. So it's the maximum upload and download speed that you can get, and you also get some extra extra features or support for extra bandwidth, I would say, like carrier aggregation and other things which are available starting from Cat 6 and above.
Great, thanks for the question, Glenn. Okay, Lachlan. With the DWM 312, are we able to use this device with a 4G connection that has a static IP? If not, how does the VPN connect?
Yeah, absolutely. It supports either dynamic or static IP. You can set it up manually in the device, or if your provider gives you a static IP via DHCP, it can also be done. And DWM 312 supports VPN connectivity on its own, or also supports VPN pass-through.
Alex, perhaps I could ask a question here for you, and I think there's a couple there that people have asked questions about static IPs. Do you get static IPs from any of the carriers that you work with?
Yeah, so we've got two solutions we go with. We have a bunch of Optus wholesale SIMs that we get directly from Optus that just provide a dynamic IP, and these are for our customers that just need to get up and running very quickly, don't require a static IP service. And then we do have 2 or 3 small carriers that all wholesale from the big players, obviously, in terms of services that do provide us with static IPs via DHCP. So we do have a couple options there. We have also done, with the VPN functionality in the 312 is quite good. We have also done site-to-site VPN. So while using dynamic SIM cards into our customers' DSRs or firewalls. So 2 scenarios based on what the customer would require.
Probably.
Is it difficult to get a static IP from a carrier?
No, it's not. The smaller carriers we use, which I'm happy to share with anyone over email, the contact details, I'm sure they'd be happy to help you out. No, the pricing's a little bit more expensive, obviously, but generally we find it working all pretty okay. Yeah, it's pretty, I would say, widely available, but not in your sort of consumer-esque 4G world. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Some more questions coming through. Keep them coming. Thanks, Lachlan. Hopefully we answered that. We answered that question. Another one here from Glenn. Does DEX integrate with Zapier?
Yeah, we need to get back to you on that, Glenn. Not sure. Haven't tested that, or we haven't. But I can send an inquiry to our developers just to see if it can be integrated with Zapier.
So, Glenn, perhaps in the if you could complete the survey at the end and include your email address in there, and we'll get back to you. We'll get back to you with an answer to that one. Okay, Don, down in Victoria. Good afternoon to you, Don. Hope you're travelling well. With this if we answer this, are you going to do an Eddie Maguire on us, and are we going to win $10,000? I'm not sure. Anyway, we'll see how we go. Don has been very observant. He's noticed the DWM 312, but in your DEX presentation earlier, there are a few different models, the DWM 321 and 315. What are those?
Yeah, so we obviously will be bringing more 4G, 5G devices onto Australian market. So these are devices which are currently available in other countries, say in Europe and say in Singapore. So we were specifically connecting to a Singapore server. But yeah, so 315 is similar to 312, except it offers also an Ethernet WAN port, and also supports GPS. So it's got an extra modules in there for GPS, and it's got GPS antenna connector there. Yeah, 3-to-1 is also one of the future products which we're looking into bringing to Australia and New Zealand.
Okay, thanks, Don. The check's in the mail, I'm sure. Okay, Aidan asked a question. Does DEX only apply for certain models of products?
Yes, there is a list of products which are supported. So obviously, D-Link products only. Most of them, so more mobility devices like 4G modems and routers.
Okay, great. Thanks, Aidan. Excellent question here from Tony. Does the cloud management portal allow us to set up a user account for the end user for his customers with limited or restricted rights?
Yes, absolutely. So you can add a user who can just only monitor, view, and only specific devices or a specific site only, but cannot modify on any settings, or you can allow them to do certain things. So there is quite a lot of flexibility in that regard.
Okay, Don, I think we've answered that question there. Please let me know if we haven't. Question here from Milos. Do you have the details of who provides static 4G IP? I've tried Telstra, Optus and Vodafone, who don't want to provide this service, just dynamic. I think it's any of those carriers can provide it. I guess it's a matter of, Alex, from what I understand, a matter of speaking to their business or commercial sales teams rather than going into a retail store.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we haven't had any experience with Telstra or Vodafone. Optus for us offers sort of the best price for the service and decent coverage in the areas we work. But like I said, happy to supply the details of the other smaller telco carriers that we use, who essentially act as more of an aggregate or a wholesale some of the bigger carriers to us, and we keep all that stuff in one place with those guys. So happy to supply those. But yeah, Optus should be able to provide that if you speak to their business or commercial teams.
Okay. Aidan here asked another question on carriers. ISPs, any recommendations for ISPs that can provide port forwarding on static IPs over 4G? Got a technical one there. Don't know if we're going to be able to answer that one here today.
Well, I think it's the same question as static IP or public IP on 4G connection.
Yeah. So for us, like I said, Optus has been the sort of go-to for the 4G side as well as a couple of smaller carriers. So again, happy to email some stuff through to anyone that is interested.
Okay. Comment here from Ian. Thanks very much for your kind words. Just a comment, guys. I've been using numerous DWI 921 modems for at least 5 years to help small business people get enough capacity to use their online apps when ADSL wouldn't cope. All of this is a great concept. Awesome. Thanks, Ian. Appreciate your kind words. We'd love to have happy customers. Craig here answers the question. Alex, feel free to answer honestly. Have you had any experience with other 4G modems?
Sure have. So prior to our 312s, we had played around with a Netcom product of a similar nature. I think it's more aligned to your 315. It has GPS inbuilt to it as well. It was okay, bit clunky for our liking and a bit more expensive at the time. as well as some more consumer grade stuff from some TP-Link in the past. Currently, though, we're not using any other 4G stuff outside of the D-Link range. Yeah, we've tried to streamline our vendors as much as possible.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for answering that honestly, I think. All right. Okay, Andrew wants to know about static IPs. I think we've answered that question, Andrew. Hopefully that's there. Okay, good question here, Alex. This might be one for you, although your answer is probably going to be Optus. Which 4G provider do you find best for data pooling?
So on the cheaper, lower end side on the dynamic IPs, definitely Optus. So they've got a really affordable range of month-to-month and 12-month contracts if you want to get a slightly lower price on data pooling. Telstra hasn't really been very cooperative in that sort of sense, especially price range. I will note that none of our smaller telcos that we provide static IPs with do data pooling. They're all pretty hard limited packs per customer, and so we monitor that quite closely to make sure we don't go over those limits per customer if we're using them.
Okay, great. Thanks, Alex and David. Aaron, pre-sales engineer down in Victoria, has just put in a comment. Nice to hear from you, Aaron. Here from Aaron, a good site that he mentions to go and check out mobile coverage information is the Radio Frequency National Site Archive, RFNSA, which you can find at rfnsa.com.au. Another good website to have a look at where coverage is Oz Towers, OZTOWERS. It's another useful one to go and have a look at as well. I'm sure there's similar ones there that are set up for across New Zealand and other countries as well. Okay, David's got a quick question here. Benefits of a DWM 312 versus a DWR 921. I'm sure Ilya and I can have a go at sharing the answer to this one. So 2 SIM card slots on the DWM 312 versus 1 on the 921. 312 is in a metal housing that's zinc coated and can withstand temperatures up to 60 degrees. So the 921 is more of a consumer product. I think it's 40 or 45 degrees off the top of my head. The 312 also supports IP pass-through. So that's great if you're using it in bridge mode and you want to know what the public IP address that you've received from the carrier. If you're using a D-Link DSR router or one of the other vendors' UTMs, whether it be Sophos or SonicWall or WatchGuard, to be able to see that information as well. Having IP pass-through is important. Warranty is also quite different. The 921 has a 3-year warranty, which is return to base. The 312 has a lifetime warranty, which also gives you next business day advanced replacement as well as standard. So there's a whole bunch of I guess sales features there. Ilya, is there any other technical things that are important on the 312? VPN, I would say.
I think you've covered it all. Well, 312 also supports CLI communication, so it's got a bit more options in here in terms of configuration and management. So it is positioned as obviously a business grade product. So obviously all the business features are available there.
And there's obviously the DEX software that's available for it as well.
Yeah. So the DEX remote management. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a quick question here from James that's come in a different chat window. Can you do firmware upgrades via the DEX platform?
Yes, absolutely. So you can as I showed, you can upload your firmware files for your different devices, and through the remote access through DEX, you can push the firmware to the devices either straight away, or you can schedule a firmware update. So you can create a scheduled task to push the firmware to one or multiple devices.
Okay. Aidan's got a question here. Do we have any plans for doing D-Link training over Zoom? The answer is yes to that. We're not planning on doing the DCNP full day 8-hour courses over Zoom. I think that's probably a Zoom overload trying to do that. And it's about 50% of that course is hands-on practical, which it's potentially quite difficult to be able to deliver that sort of service over a Zoom over a Zoom meeting. We have been doing some work on a couple of newer short courses on our DGS 1210 switches and also our Nucleus Connect wireless access points as well. So hopefully we'll have some news on that coming out as early as next week. There's a bit of demand for it. We are wanting to do that. Obviously, it's very new in terms of having to deliver material in that way. So I'm glad to see that there's demand out there. Hopefully there's more people similar to you, Aidan, that are interested in that as well. Great question. John, I think we've answered your question on Alex Hughes's plans through Optus. If there's more information that you need, John, feel free to drop me a line, and I'll come back to you. Okay, question here from Bernie. Not D-Link's Bernie, but another Bernie. I've tried unsuccessfully to get the DWI 925 VPN to work with anything, even other D-Link VPN devices. Has this been resolved? Ilya, that might be a...
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not aware of issues, but certainly, Bernie, get in touch with say with us, or leave your email address or contact numbers in the feedback form, and we'll get in touch with you, and we'll look into what issues you're having, and definitely we'll try to help you out.
Yep, please, if you want to do that, that's fine. You can also call our partner priority support right now. We've got both numbers here for Australia and New Zealand on the screen right at the moment. So that is available Monday to Friday, 8 to 5. John, great to have you, John, from Fusion Broadband is on here, the maker of one of those bonders that Alex was using with that customer of his. Is the new battery-operated 4G router available to purchase now? Is it something on the roadmap? John, that is on the roadmap. We expect to see that. Probably September, October would be my guess on that one as to when that's going to come. But yeah, we expect there's going to be pretty big demand on that one. Okay. Mark asked the question: what's the Fusion box your guest used? Well, John Soden is the person to speak to. We just asked the question there. Alex, what's their website that you might go to have a look at, to go and get in touch with them?
I assume it's
fusionbroadband.com.au. I'd probably be guessing, but I imagine right.
But yeah, it was a good solution. Very good for bonding NBN services if you've got multiple slow NBN services, or ADSL 4G, and then handing off one static public IP into your customer's environment. So yeah, really saved us out of a few issues. So yeah, get in touch with John and the team there if you need something similar.
Okay, Matt asked a question here: can any of the 4G or 5G modem routers have the ability to increase ping times, or is this limited to the cellular network? We use these in resi applications which require faster ping times for gaming.
Well, normally the ping times, they're not related to the router or modem itself. It's the carrier, how they handle your traffic and how they route your traffic. So very little depends on the modem itself. So on a poor line or a poor connection, even with the best possible modem, you will not see any improvements, unfortunately.
Okay. A comment here from Jade. Nice to have you aboard, my friends. We've got access to static IPs via Optus from $10 per SIM. Very quick and easy to set up. So Jade runs an Optus business centre up on the Central Coast and also in North Ryde as well. If anyone wants Jade's details, I'd be certainly happy to share them. Terrific. Thanks, Jade, for being here this morning. Okay, Andrew Pickard has a comment here. I find Telstra do not support static IPs on their 4G network. Yep, look, that may well be the case. As Alex has said this morning a couple of times, that Optus have certainly been pretty easy to engage there. Just a quick question for you, Alex, from me. Are you on? Have you got SIMs on contract with Optus, or do you just do that on a month-to-month ad hoc sort of basis?
Mostly month to month. I think we've got one or two, which currently I've got one in my laptop, for example, which I could pull out and utilize for a customer we've had to. But yeah, mostly month to month, a bit more flexible that way.
Okay, another question here. When you're talking about renting these things out monthly, the 4G service, obviously the router and the SIM, roughly how much do you charge for that?
It depends. So look, if it's an emergency situation and perhaps a customer that we don't have a lot of touch with, it'll be a higher price. If it's a regular customer for a longer period of time, it'll be a lower price. So we usually try and focus on a sort of 3 to 4 month return on the hardware cost, and then factoring in services set up and the internet costs per month. So again, happy to share all of our sort of calculation details with anyone that's interested and want to sort of commercialize a similar product.
Okay, great. Last couple of, I think we're down to the last question now from Don. How do we identify devices which are compatible with the DEX cloud platform?
All right, so currently the DWM 312 is supported. The future coming DWM 315, DWR 926 and DWR 925, DWM 321, DWM 311. So not all of these devices are available in Australia, but say worldwide they are available, and they've been implemented to be supported with DEX system. And the way DEX system works is that the device itself needs to be registered within the system. You just upload the MAC addresses and the serial numbers of the device into DEX, and in the unit itself there is a configuration there for server management server URL. So you put the URL in there, and that's how it starts talking to the server.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ilya. Just to clarify, DEX is a different solution to our Nucleus Cloud solution. So DEX is only working with these 4G and presumably 5G mobile devices. That it is different to Nucleus Cloud. Don, I just see your comment here. Yeah, so switches and access points are in the Nucleus Cloud platform, which is a bit different. Okay, John has just confirmed that their website is fusionbroadband.com.au. So if anyone is interested in that, John Soden would be the person to speak to there about their bonding, multiple internet connection bonding device that they have. Okay, that I think concludes our webinar today. I'd like to thank Alex for joining us. It's great to have one of our partners on board. Thanks for your ongoing support. It's great to work with you, as it is with the many other thousands of partners that we work with all around the region as well. Ilya, it's always a pleasure having you on board as well. Thanks very much for saving my bacon with all those questions. Appreciate you putting your technical hat on there. Thanks also for sharing with us the information about the new D-Link DEX service there as well. Certainly looks pretty interesting. And a worthwhile thing to go and have a look at. So more information coming on that one out in June, when we're looking forward to launching that. Please don't forget to respond to the survey that comes out. Should only take a couple of minutes for you to complete. So thanks very much for joining us, and we look forward to working with you over the coming months and for the rest of the year, and joining you on another D-Link webinar. Hopefully we'll have another one up in the next 2 or 3 weeks. It is goodbye and good afternoon from myself, Phil Tarbox, and from my colleagues, Ilya and Alex. Thanks again.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.